Good morning, everyone. This is Jeffy Kennedy, author of epic fantasy romance. I'm here with my first cup of coffee. Delightful. Today is Monday, August 26th. It's my Aunt Karen's birthday. Happy birthday, Aunt Karen. Um, I'm sending you a present. Belated, but I am. Uh, yeah, I hope you all are well. I had a great weekend. I went to Bubonicon in Albuquerque, and it was just a really great conference. We had a wonderful time. I had great conversations with people, and it was lovely. Yeah, it was just all around a great conference. Really good panels. Um, Various people sat down with me and regaled me with tales and expressed sympathy and support, and it was unexpected and just really heartwarming. Uh, Highlights were, well, let's see, maybe I'll sort of go down in a list. Um, Michael Cassett, who is a screenwriter and is currently working on a short film for George R. R. Martin. He's good friends with Melinda Snodgrass. He sat with me. We sat up in the bar Friday night until about 11, drinking wine, and he regaled me with SIFWA scandals over the years, and that was just great. I was on an excellent panel with people that night. I probably won't be able to go in order because it occurs to me I now it's something of a blur. Saturday evening, I spend a lot of time on the bar. You all know this about me. Had a great dinner and drinks with Arkady Martine and Vivian Shaw and Ursula Vernon. The four of us got going on this round of talking about creepy slash supernatural things that had happened to us in real life. And we really did start freaking each other out, and it was great. Such smart, interesting people, and that's it's just great being able to have those kinds of conversations. I got to sit with Melinda Snodgrass and chat. Connie Willis was amazing, and Connie Willis said that she would give me a blurb, an endorsement quote for Never the Roses. And I met TJ Clune, who is my editor's sibling now. So we had a great little chat and several conversations with Carrie Vaughn and Diana Rowland, the very entertaining people. Got to have lunch with Jim Sorensen, which is always a pleasure. I'll put the photo in the show notes is from the last panel of the conference that Jim was on, and also Ursula Vernon and Brian Hinson and Chris Panettiere. I think I've got that right. But all really smart people, and we talked about alien fauna, creating alien fauna, and it was really fun because uh, again, smart people. Ursula also has a background in biology, and at one point, well, we had several points, but I warned the audience ahead of time. I said, I know these people, and it's going to get detailed because they started out talking about insects intercourse. That intercourse was not the word they used, but I'm trying to be good for YouTube. And we were talking about bats with missiles because Jim is a Transformers guy, and we, got to these. I don't know. It was just people started feeding off of each other. It was the perfect kind of panel that way. But we were talking. I asked them, like, what do you do when you're trying to come up with something that's really alien, really unrelated? And Ursula made the point that it's difficult because there's the concept of form follows function, right? And I did bring that up, that it's like, there's only so many things you can do. And, like if you're going to be a flying creature, there's only so many ways that you can fly through a gaseous medium, right? You have to have certain kinds of appendages to do that. But Ursula said that the thing about is that you need that bilateral symmetry is a very efficient design. And that one reason is because you can put the anus at the end. And we got into this whole conversation about the problems of where do you put the anus. So at the end of the panel, I did say that the subtitle of the panel could have been Alien Fauna, where do you put the anus? So it was fun. It was great conversations. And I'm very excited to announce that next year I am going to be the Toastmaster for Bubonicon. Woohoo! They asked me like a week before the conference and then announced it at the closing ceremonies. So that'll be fun, and I'm honored. It's my first Toastmaster gig. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah, and so yeah, it was just lovely to have conversations with lots of people. Uh, George R. R. Martin even congratulated me, and he sat and had lunch with us on Saturday, and so it was nice to just get to have a lunch. Okay, so other things. So let's see. Oh, and I did read from, I know you all are interested, you're dying to know. I did read from the opening for Never the Roses, and I think people liked it. They asked really interesting questions about it. So, yeah, so I think I can move on topics now. Come to Bubonicon next year. I got a request from faithful listener John Ajudabar. Asking me, he sent me a video from another writer and asked me to talk some more about some of the things this guy touched on. I love it when people suggest things like that because I do want to know what you all would like to hear from me. So this was on the topic of older writers being cranky giving advice. And this guy was kind of going on about, and I don't remember his name. I'm not going to go back and look right now. He was talking about how the difficulty of making a living as a writer. And so that when younger writers come to more experienced writers, and I'm talking in terms of experience, not age here, that people can be kind of cranky about it because, or come off sounding cranky because they don't want to lie. So, when they explain that it's going to be really difficult to get a particular, sorry, I probably should have my thoughts a little bit more organized, and I'm going to sneeze. Sneezing accomplished. When a doe-eyed young writer comes to a more experienced writer and says, how should I do this? What should I do? I want to be a writer. And the more experienced writer can come down like a ton of bricks at times and says, don't quit your day job. And it's not easy. And this guy brings out some of the numbers on, like only 1%, are successful, and, like maybe a tenth of that make a living at it. And I'm not sure those numbers are good anymore. The advent of Amazon and self-publishing has really changed the game that way. But yeah, he's saying his point, and I think he's not wrong. That you don't want to mislead someone. You don't want to say, "Oh yeah, sure, go for it. It's going to be a cakewalk. Riches and roses shall shower upon thee." It's very salient for me that this big release, which it doesn't escape my notice that Bubonicon. I've been going there for 15 years, and it's this year when I have the big tour release that they asked me to be a Toastmaster. Those of you who self-publish, when you ask what is the benefit of traditional publishing, this is one of them, is that there is, right or wrong, still a level of validation attached to having a release from a big five publisher. And, cons are going to do that. They want someone that people look to and say, oh, there's the brass ring. This is what I want. And so, yeah, I mean, this is 30 years for me. My first published writing when I first started trying to write, and I did get published pretty fast, but it was 94. And so it's salient that it's taken me 30 years to get to this point. And when younger writers ask me this, and like, how long did it take, and there's different kinds of milestones, but there are people that they don't want to hear that it takes 30 years, and I don't blame them. Nobody wants to hear that, but it is the reality, right? It is the truth, and there's not really any getting around it. Lightning hits some people. That's great, but you can't count on lightning. That's why it's lightning. But I get this, that you want to be honest with people. You don't want to mislead them. I do believe that there are ways to be honest without being cranky, without stomping on people's dreams, because, and this kind of relates to some of the things I was talking about last week, about the, being careful about complaining about stuff on social media. It's easy to let, human nature wise, let the bitterness come through, to let the unhappiness leak through with whatever you are frustrated with your job. Because, I mean, if you're making a living at it, it's your job. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm coughing now. I think my allergies are getting me a bit. More coffee. I remember when I was baby writer. So much a baby writer that I think I was maybe taking my first creative writing class. I was still in graduate school. I was still I had been getting my PhD in neurophysiology. And that's why I was on the alien fauna panel, because I'm always interested in that stuff. And I'd cut bait. I was getting my master's degree because I figured out I didn't want to be a research scientist. I wanted to be a writer. And I went to this conference that was sponsored by the Association for Women in Science. And I was a member of that group on our campus, and we had a grant, and we used the grant to go to this conference. And it was very interesting. It was, I would say, transformative to me. It was in California, in Davis, and it was, woman after woman getting up and talking about their careers. And this one woman got up there, and I do not remember her name. I think it was like a fog of grief. You'll find out why. But she had written a book, and she got up there and gave some kind of talk about being an author and this sort of thing. I don't remember. I don't even remember what she talked about. But we were sitting at lunch afterwards at these kind of long lunch tables. It was on a college campus, UC Davis probably. And so we were sort of like sitting on those long lunch table things out in a courtyard and eating our boxed lunches that came with the conference. And I sat across from this gal on purpose because I wanted to talk to her. And her mother was there too. Her mother had come to see her speak. And so I said to this gal, I said, I want to be a writer. It's like I've, cutting bait on my degree, and I've decided I'm going to be a writer, and asked her for advice. And, she was so crushing to me. I don't know if it was that particular moment in time for me, or I think because I did not yet, I wasn't braced for that kind of reaction. I thought that it would be very much a, hail fellow well met, and here, let me give you advice. And instead, she told me how difficult it was, and made it very clear that she was special, that what she had accomplished was very special, and that it was highly unlikely that I would be able to do the same thing. And uh, and it was, I keep using the word crushing, right? But it was, and I started to cry. I mean, uh, which I hate about myself, right? It's like I'm better about it now that I'm older. This was in my early 20s still, mid 20s. I think I was like 24, 25. I could figure it out. Anyway, um, yeah, and so I couldn't help it. I started to cry, and she didn't really care. But I remember her mother sitting next to her across from me, and her mother giving me this very sympathetic look, and I could tell that the mother um, didn't like how her daughter had talked to me. And I ended up like slinking off with my box lunch. It was like the pitch perfect dragging the chair, right? And I took my little box lunch and I went off to a corner and I sat there and cried and, ate my apple or whatever it was they gave us. And that affected me for a very long time. I did, it was, it was awful. And it doesn't matter that the advice she gave me was more or less true, um, because it isn't easy and, not everybody succeeds. Uh, she did not have to be cruel to me. And I feel like there are ways to deliver the truth to people without being unkind and without implying that they are failures before they've even begun. In contrast, uh, my favorite professor, I've talked about him often, but maybe not in a while, Professor Hoddes. He was my major advisor in college, described himself as a non practicing Orthodox Jew, which is a joke for those of you who get that. And he was my mentor in so many ways. And when I was a senior, I went to him and asked him for advice on what direction I should go, because I was thinking about going to grad school in continuing. He was my comparative religious studies teacher because I double majored biology and comparative religious studies. And I was trying to decide, I thought about following in his footsteps and going to Columbia and getting a doctor of theology. And he gave me this advice. We talked a lot about like what was it I wanted to do, and I was still figuring it out, but I was very interested in the nature of consciousness and like who we are, where our spirit interfaces with the organic matter, and that kind of thing. And Professor Hoddes said to me that I was very fortunate that I had a good mind for science, because that would be a job I could always fall back on, and that he thought I should go to graduate school in science and be able to pay for my life that way. And then it would free me up to think about and read about and work on whatever I wanted to. And that ended up being, it ended up being really great advice. I followed it. That's what I did. And yeah, for 20 years that I was working as to become a full-time author, I also had a job as an environmental consulting and paid for my life that way. And I learned a lot of things that way. I learned a lot about um, working with people and business that have proved to be invaluable. So, but it's interesting because I had a very good friend in college named Steve. And Steve was an artist, graphic artist, really great cartoonist, and he was also a student of Professor Hoddes. And Steve told me quite a few years later, we'd all maintained, Professor Hoddes just loved teaching, and many of his students, he's gone now, he passed away, uh, but many of his students maintained conversations with him over the years. And so Steve was having a hard time making a living as a graphic artist. It was right at the time when clip art became easily available, and he lost a whole lot of his freelance clients. But he had gone to Professor Hoddes for advice. And I think to Steve's chagrin, Professor Hoddes had referenced me. And he told Steve, he said, look at what Jeffy did. She went and got her degree in science, and now she has this very secure job where, to pay for her life. And she works on the art on the side, and you should consider doing that. And I think Steve was really unhappy with that advice. I think he was unhappy with, I don't know, maybe the comparison to me. He was a couple of years ahead of me in school, and he was very well known at our college for being a cartoonist for the paper, and was much more successful than I was very early on. Got a great job after school and all that kind of thing. But that was advice. So I guess my point is, and I do have one, that Professor Hoddes gave each of us the exact same advice. And he gave it in his very smart, thoughtful, spiritually based, but also practically based, intelligent way. And he was kind. He was saying, I understand what it is you long to do, and here's what I think are the practical ways to approach that. And yet we received it both very differently, right? I think that Steve never did really follow that advice. I'm not sure. We fell out of touch. But it made all the difference to me. So I don't think that you have to be unkind to people when giving them the truth, but also how people hear your advice is largely up to them. So on that note, I'm going to sign off for the day. I get to start a new book today. Reluctant Wizard comes out tomorrow. If you have not yet pre-ordered, please pre-order. It releases tomorrow, August 27th. And if you out there, I know a number of you who are listening have ordered physical copies. I've already placed my order for author copies, and I will be shipping those out soon. And by about September 2nd, possibly earlier, but as soon as people who pre-ordered on Apple get their versions, there's a little bit of a delay shipping to Apple. As soon as you get your books, then it's going exclusive to Kindle Unlimited for a few months. Fair warning. Or if you love KU, you can read it there. And today I'm going to start A Rose in the Mirror, the sequel to Nip of the Roses. So exciting. All right. You all take care, and I will talk to you on Friday. Bye-bye.